Welcome to the recorded presentation on course formats. My name is Stephanie Page, and I'm the training specialist for North and Central Florida. We're going to cover today what is service delivery, what are service delivery methods, and course formats, and what is a stacked class. Service delivery, we are all service delivery. It refers to the process and people involved in delivering our classes. From the training specialist to the scheduler to the admin, and most important, the instructor, we all have a piece of delivering courses. How do we deliver courses? We deliver courses in only 3 ways: community courses, full service, and third-party provider courses. Community courses are open to anybody. They can sign up 2 different methods, online or by calling our 1-800 Red Cross number. They're organized and scheduled by service delivery staff. So they are organized and scheduled through our training scheduler. The training scheduler gives volunteer instructors first choice of classes. The classes are usually held in Red Cross locations or at community centers where we have partners. As a volunteer instructor, most of your courses will be community courses. Generally, these courses have different students, but most of them are from different industries, and they need this training for their job. You will receive a roster, usually via email, potentially mailed to you, but currently we're emailing them. And we have a new system of issuing digital certifications at the end of your class, so there's no more hard cards. The digital cert goes directly out to the student at the end of your class. Full service. Full service is when we go out to a specific organization and do a class for them at their location. These are contracted classes. We have salespeople that sell these classes, and then we fulfill them. So there's a possibility as a volunteer instructor you could be scheduled to teach a full service. If that's going to be the case, you will have some additional training because there are some additional steps to doing a full service class. Third-party providers, you'll often hear us say AP or LTP. APs are authorized providers, and they are third-party organizations that contract with us to provide training with their own employee instructors. So sometimes you have an instructor that is actually an entrepreneurial instructor, and they own a business where they go out and train at organizations or companies. And those are what we call licensed training providers, or LTPs. So these organizations don't really have anything to do with volunteer instructors, but you'll hear the term quite often. They teach usually either within their company or they teach as a business. They do these classes at a reduced rate because they're providing their own instructor in their own location and their own materials. Course formats. There are actually 4 types of course formats that we use. The full course, which most of you are going to be familiar with because you will have attended at least one full course. The review course, a challenge course, and then there are blended learning courses. The full course is, the complete course is taught in the classroom. There's no pre-training, there's no online. They're not expected to have or know about CPR. They don't need to have any prior certifications or experience. You would be using the full course instructor manual and either the video or the presentation to deliver a full course. For lay responder courses, we don't require exams anymore. For professional rescue, or what we call CPRO quite often, we do require a final exam. So we do offer, technology-wise, in some locations we have laptops and projectors, and we do offer you the opportunity to use the course presentation, and you'll hear more about that during your training. Review courses is an instructor-led course, but they must have been certified within, either are certified or been certified within the 12 months prior. So during a review course, the instructor actually, there's no lecture components or discussions. It's a very abbreviated version of the course. You assume that they've already been exposed to all of the information prior to this, so you generally have skill video presentations followed by guided practice and then independent practice. We still do end-of-course scenarios. Again, lay responder courses, written exams are not required, but for pro courses, they are. You can find the review course outline on Instructor's Corner, where you can find all of our materials for digital download. Challenge courses are an instructor-led approach that allows people that have significant prior experience to just come in and perform the skills in front of an instructor, and the instructor certifies the student without any prompting or any review. There's no real prep work. It's really somebody comes in, is able to perform each one of the required skills, and you check off those skills and you certify them. Challenge courses are somewhat unusual in our division, but they are still performed, so it is something that you do need to know about. The outline for challenges, again, is found on Instructor Corner, and end-of-course scenarios are still required. End-of-course scenarios are a little bit similar to what we used to do as the test at the end of it. It is, rather than a written test, it is a skill test. Blended learning is actually a newer thing to Red Cross, and the blended learning course format, it uses a web-based portion, and that web-based portion does all of the online stuff where they get to hear the lectures, see the videos, they get some quizzes in between, and then they do a final test. So it replaces all of the instructor-led lectures, discussions, and video presentations. So when they do come into class, it's a much more shortened class. It's very similar to a review class, where you do show a few videos as a quick review before you go into the skills session. So there is, when they've completed their online training, they have to print a completion certificate, and they bring it into the instructor on the day of the class so that you know that they've actually done that. If they don't have that, they do have an option of taking the test at the end of the class so that they can still be certified at the end of the class. Again, the blended learning is really, it's really just the skills review and in blended learning, the skill session is without lecture discussion, and so there is a blended learning supplement found on Instructor Corner. You can also use the course presentation found on Instructor Corner. Since testing was already done prior to the course, there's no written exam, and the end-of-course scenarios are not required for the lay responder courses. When participants arrive, you ask them for their completion certificate. If they don't have one, you welcome them to stay and offer them the opportunity for a written examination. If they don't want to do that, they need to be rescheduled. And you can do that via the Training Support Center at the 1-800 number. This is just a chart that shows a little bit about what you do in each of the course formats. It tells you whether or not there is lecture involved, whether there's a manual that you can use, if you're going to conduct end-of-course scenarios, if there's a final written exam, if there's any kind of course prerequisites, or if there's a course presentation. So this chart is available from your training specialist. There are many tools available, and you can also ask for a copy of this presentation from your training specialist if this is a tool that you think would be useful. Knowledge check. If I'm teaching a blended learning course, I have to make sure I do which of the following: download, print, and use the blended learning supplement, ask participants to hand in their online completion certificates, and I need to make sure that I'm using the blended learning course presentation. Can you guess which one it is? Technically, the answer is all of the above, but I'm going to do that with the caveat that the blended learning course presentation is not a requirement. It is just a suggestion. If you do not have the technology available, you can still use the video presentation. If I'm teaching a blended learning course, I have to make sure I do which of the following: download and print the blended learning supplement from Instructor's Corner, which tells you how to do the class, ask participants to hand in their online completion certificates, and ensure that you're using the blended learning course presentation. Again, all of the above is actually the correct answer. What are stacked courses? The term stacked actually refers to a method of scheduling for us. And each course, think of this as each course is a component. So CPR for adults is a component. AED is a component. First aid is a component. And pediatric or infant CPR is another component. So if you think of these as different components, you'll understand when we stack classes how this can work. You'll teach all the participants, you'll get 3 course rosters, but you'll teach all the participants in those 3 course rosters at the same time. You'll start by teaching, because almost every course contains this adult CPR component, you'll start by teaching adult CPR. Once each of the students has finished with the components that they were enrolled for, they can leave. You would hold the certification process, the digital certification process, till the very end of class, but that student can actually leave at that point once they're finished with their components. Stack classes can be, most often you'll see them as blended learning classes, but they can also be regular community classes. In a regular community class, we might stack an adult CPR AED with an adult first aid. So you would do the entire adult CPR AED section, and then you would do first aid. We do the stack classes to up our enrollment numbers because different companies have different requirements, and different people need to take different classes. This way we can ensure that you are teaching to a full class each time. Stack classes can also be delivered as full service. This is an example of blended learning stack classes. So we would stack adult CPR AED. The next class would be adult first aid CPR AED. Then adult and pediatric first aid CPR AED. CPRO is actually not within the main stacks, but we usually will do it in the same day so that you have a full 8-hour section of classes. This is blended learning stack classes. This just gives you, this chart just gives you a good idea. Generally, those classes are approximately 2 hours when you do a stack of 3. So you may have adult CPR AED and then first aid. Or you could have a stack where you've got adult and pediatrics. So you can see that the times here between 6 and 7, at 7 o'clock you would be finished with the adult CPR AED. At 7 o'clock you would start the first aid section. And at 7:30 you would be finished with the first aid section. So anyone that was in there for an adult CPR AED would have left at 7. Anybody that was in there for an adult first aid CPR AED would leave at 7:30. And then you would do the final portion of the class from 7:30 to 8 p.m., and that's the pediatric CPR. You would finish then. Again, these charts, if they're useful to you, are available in the presentation, which is available from your training specialist. Scenarios for full course stacked classes. So this is, you're delivering a full course. You may be delivering a CPR, an adult CPR AED, and an adult first aid CPR AED class at the same day at the same time. So this is the only time when scenarios are not given at the end of the class. They're given at the end of the class that people are teaching. So if you're teaching CPR, adult CPR AED, you would do the scenario at the end of that section. And then you'd start teaching, you'd let those students go, and then you'd start teaching the first aid section, and you did the first aid scenario at the end of that section. There is a very detailed outline available, so, you know, again, all you really need to do is ask for some tools, and you will be trained and set with another instructor on how to do all of these. So don't worry that you need to memorize any of this. It's just a tool to get you familiarized with some of the terminology. This is just an example of a full course stack class. This is the one that we do most often, which is adult first aid CPR and adult CPR AED. You can see when the times are. We would schedule the adult CPR AED students until 12. At the end of that, you would do the scenarios, and then you would go to lunch, and you'd come back, and you'd do the first aid portion, and then you'd do the scenario for that. So this is just another example to give you more of a visual. Same thing, a little bit more of a visual so that you understand when to do the scenario and when the student leaves. This reminds me a little bit of the math problems we used to get in elementary school, where a train is going east and 60 miles an hour and a train is going west at 100 miles an hour. Exactly where will they meet? So this is really just an example for you to be able to take a look at and understand and try and figure out when they would be leaving. By looking at your roster, you've got 2 rosters. You've got an adult CPR AED roster and an adult first aid CPR AED roster. So Sally and Bob only need to take the adult, and Alice and Mike will be taking the adult first aid. So you would essentially, you would teach everyone, Sally, Bob, Alice, Mike, everyone, adult CPR AED, then Sally and Bob would leave after you've done the scenarios, and you would continue on with Alice and Mike and teach the first aid and do the first aid scenario. So just to summarize, there are 3 methods that we use, and only 3 methods that we use for training. So community classes are taught by either our part-time instructors, our full-time instructors, or our volunteer instructors. Full service, same thing, taught by our part-time, our full-time, and our volunteer instructors. So, and third-party provider classes are taught by outside instructors. They are considered Red Cross instructors, but they don't work for the Red Cross. They work for the organization that they're teaching for, or they work for themselves. There are actually 4 different course formats that we've discussed. And it's the full course, which is the full-day course. You do all of the lectures, the guided discussions, the videos, and the scenarios. You do it all as the instructor. The review course, the student already has a certification or has a certification that expired within the last 12 months. They know the materials. They're coming in for a review class. And that review is just that. It's a review. It's not the full class. You lose the lectures. You lose the discussions. You go through some reviews, and you do the skills. And you just follow the outline from Instructor's Corner. Challenge courses, exactly what they say. It's a person coming in and challenging, the instructor is challenging the person to do the skills. There's no review. If they don't pass, they need to sign up for a full course. They need to be able to do the skills as you check them off from the sheet. Blended learning courses, they will do their online video and tests and quizzes and activities. They'll do it all online prior to the class, so that the class is greatly shortened because all they're doing really is the skills practice and then the final scenarios where they show you they can do the skills. So you're just checking them off. You're going through the skills with them, and then you're just checking them off to make sure that they have the skills. So rather than a 5-hour course, you're talking about a 1.5 or 2-hour course because they've done all of the other stuff online. So STEC classes are scheduled in both full courses and blended learning course formats. And I just want to say that this is a fairly complicated presentation, and if you're brand new and you really haven't taught many courses, don't fret. We have a mentoring process that we will put you through, and we will ensure that you have at least seen or co-taught with each one of these types of classes before you would be required to do one on your own. I encourage you to ask your training specialist any questions and ask them for these presentations if you think any of the charts or information would be useful to you. Thanks for listening, and I appreciate your time. Thanks for becoming a volunteer for the Red Cross. We really appreciate you.